Well, I start off by I go to Atlanta Market and I walk the show for a day just to see what the most current trends are and to see if there's enough to fill out a look. So it can't just be the ornaments for the trees, it has to be the product to support the tree. So it needs to be votives, uh, aprons, sitters. It has to be enough to fill out a whole look. So, and that's how you know what's trending. So I spend a day just walking the show to see what's trending and if there's enough product to support the look. So we need ornament, not just the ornaments, we need everything that goes with the look.
Okay.
So,
So there's definitely a method to your madness.
yep, I spend the first day of the show just walking, making notes, going back to the vendors that I think that I can pull together looks from, and that's where I start my process. You can always tell also if something kind of fun, like when gnomes started to trend a couple of years ago. Once you start seeing it in a ribbon and a towel, filtering down to that level, then you know you're going to have enough product to support. So that's a lot of times where some of the trendier things, once you see it filtered down into the ribbon category, you'll have enough to support the category. But the process of when I put the trees together, of course, I always have to pick first the tree that it's going on. I usually use 9-foot trees and try to elevate them here in the store, but of course, most people have a 7.5-foot tree at home. And then I just start the process of putting ribbons on, and always try to work on your tree like a triangle, like not a three-dimensional, but a one-dimensional. So just think of this as a triangle in the front. And then you can do, I would say the easiest way is just to think of it as levels. So you put the one at the top, two, and then you start alternating levels coming down. Otherwise, you can just start at the top and you don't have to make it symmetrical and you just start zigzagging. And for like a 7.5-foot, you'll probably, if you start with the top, you'll usually have 7 sections to fill out the front of the tree. And I always tell people, make sure you have enough ribbon and product to do the front of the tree, because if you start running out at home, you don't always have to do the back like the front, because it's usually facing a wall, or a side, back and a side are facing a wall. So just make sure your triangle in front looks good. Since these are display trees and we use both sides, I'll look at this as a triangle, and then I work on the back as a triangle, and then I just start filling in the sides. So that's where the process begins. And then, of course, I start filling in with the biggest product, usually in threes. So if you see a big bell, you usually see 2 other smaller bells with it, or I'll do 3 big bells or 3 small bells, but it's usually in some form of 3 or 5 or 7. And you just start at the top where your first bowl cluster is, and you kind of work down with those bowl clusters. So you'll see the 2 bells under each bowl cluster, or right around each bowl cluster. So if this is a bowl cluster, you'll see 2 bells here, and then a large one as the third, kind of usually hiding somewhat under those bows. And then it's the same thing with the small ornaments. I always hang them in groups, so you'll never just see one of this here and one here. Everything comes down to bring the color down and your eye down. So the same thing, you'll start clustering these around your bowl groups. So you'll start up and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and usually like 7. You'll bring your eye down that way with the color. And then you just keep doing that with the other layers. So, next we're starting we just put the gnomes on, and then we'll be starting these, and we'll do the same thing. We'll just start clustering these in groups to bring your eye up with the snowflake. But we never hang them in singles, and that's really important. You don't notice them and it doesn't bring your eye up. We used to add extra lights because you put so much in the tree. And I mean, these are display trees, especially like with a tree like that gold one. Yes. That's really loaded. You almost don't see the tree by the time you're done, the actual tree itself. So on a tree like that, a lot of times we would wrap in just some extra lights, because otherwise the tree seems so dark because all your ornaments are. So we might take a perfect example is to take like this, the cluster light that we have. That's super easy for anybody to wrap through a tree. I mean, you can pretty well throw it on there and it disappears into the tree if you just want it extra bright, if you're adding a lot of stuff to the tree. These are display trees. People at home, just worry about the front of the tree. Just worry about the triangle in the front. You always have the back. You always have, usually a lot of times they go in corners. So, this isn't as decorated as well. The back is usually, you start to run out of things. Make sure that front looks good and then slowly wrap around.